Hi, everybody. It's Watercolor Wednesdays. This is the fifth. Is it the fifth Wednesday in June? We picked a month with 5 Wednesdays, specifically so we could pack it all in. You guys have been doing so great. Thank you so much for joining us week after week. And maybe you're joining us live tonight. Let me know if you're watching live, where you're tuning in from, or if you're watching on the replay. I love knowing if you're watching later too. Tonight, I think, is the night a lot of us have been waiting for. I want to show you some of the things that we're going to try to pull off tonight. Look at these. These are some of the things that we're going to be able to do with your art liner markers and with just a few techniques to pull off some roses. This is just laying down some skinny washi tape in a square and pulling it off afterwards. Just doing a very, very small, delicate, tiny little leaves instead of the big ones to get this kind of look. This can be achieved so easily. A half moon style wreath with, a main bunch on the one side. And you can see here, there's no sort of great technique in like, oh, look at those lilacs. These are really just, look at, if I show you right up close, just little brush strokes. We're not having to actually draw out an actual flower, So let's just keep going here. I just want you to have that confidence that if you're not feeling like you can draw a real flower, that's okay. We're going to just use the shape of the brush. And so even with something like this, like the olive branch, So beautiful. Soft grays, soft greens. Practice mixing your colors. Again, another one of those, you got a ruler, your art liner pen, and, you just fill in that straight line box afterwards once we've done our flowers. Maybe we'll try to do something like that once we practice a little bit. And yeah, I hope you feel inspired by some of these ones that I've done, because this is not out of reach for you. And this is no sort of, great technique here. It's really about using the shape of your brushes. So pull out all the brushes that you have, whether they're the ones that are in the kit or ones that have been sitting around for a while. Pull out the brushes that you have, and let's just take a look at their shapes, because you can use them for all different things. Typically for watercolor, we're looking for round brushes. And round brushes, like we've talked about throughout the weeks, are these ones that round out at the end, but then have like a little point, a very pointy edge. I know it kind of is counterintuitive on the round, but when you look at it from the side, it really does have like a rounded effect. And then you've got some flat brushes, which can be used, for certain techniques also. But typically, we're going to be using the round brushes most often. So I'd get those kind of out and ready. And if you've got a few pieces of watercolor paper left, even if you have to chop it in 4, if you have a big piece left, or if you have a half piece left, you want to chop it in half. Because what I can tell you happens is when you're practicing, maybe I have one here, you tend to kind of just fill whatever size page you have. And then it ends up kind of being like, oh, what is this? And use the back, use the front. But I do want to go through a few different floral shapes, because just drawing a flower is, we're not here to draw flowers. We're here to let the petals sort of come out of the end of the brush. So I'm picking up sort of a medium-sized round brush, and I've just written down a couple of things to jog my memory. Flat petal, rose, lilac, peony, leaves, long leaves, short leaves, and stems.
We have a question
Sure.
already. So how long do brushes usually last, and how do you know when it needs to be replaced?
Okay, so the more expensive the brush, the more, to be honest, usually the better it is. So I've had this brush, for example, this Cotman, it's just a Winsor & Newton Cotman brush, for probably like 6-8 years. This brush, I've also had probably about the same amount of time. And the end is still good, but you can see like all of the paint is coming off like the barrel here. And it's just the difference between a brush that is, it does have the right tip, but it's just being exposed to water so much that the paint is really just coming off. So I still use this one where the paint's coming off all the time because the tip is still good. I would say if your brush has hairs that are starting to go in all kinds of opposite directions, and you can't get it to kind of calm back down, like regain its shape, then it's time for a new brush. So even though this barrel has met its match, I still use this all the time because the bristles on the end are still fine. They're not going in all directions. Trying to see if I have a brush here. You can imagine what that's like. That's when I would say it's time for a new one, when you're trying to achieve a shape, but you can't get it because there's little strands of like bristle that's kind of poking out everywhere. So keep that in mind. And that can happen to a very new brush. Sometimes brushes, when you buy them, come with like a tube on them, like kind of goes over the top like this. If you try to slide that tube back on and you go this way, instead of pulling it down over the brush that way, your bristles can get caught and you can't get them back. It's like curling your hair with a curling iron and it kinks and you're like, well, that was that hair wash. Gonna have to, try again. So, be careful with your brushes. Don't store them in a jar with the brush side down. If you're going to store them in a jar, brush side up, I would prefer to keep them in a little box, horizontal. They're just in the jar here tonight so I can reach for them. But normally they're in like a little box that has like a little magnetic box. If you think it's time for a new one, it probably is. So I'll leave it at that. Let's start with a few shapes. And I've been talking about round brushes, but the first one I had written down here is flat petal. So you have a couple different ways you can achieve a flat petal. You can use a flat brush. So I've just got my watercolors here. Maybe yeah, you can see them. Not too much water. Let's go with like a blue. Doesn't really matter for this part what color we've got, as long as we've got a good creamy mix, not too watery, not too watery, lots of creamy pigment. Flat petals you would see on something like, let me pull a couple of examples here. If we had a big floral, like this kind of a flower, like a big carnation-y type flower, or like a violet type flower. And you can use your actual brush, and see how I'm like changing the way I'm holding my brush so I can get angles. So don't hold your brush like a pencil. Hold it the way it needs to be angled. And you can use your brush almost like a little star and kind of try to achieve some of these flat petaled flower type shapes. And don't worry if this doesn't look exactly like a violet looks. And just add a little, we're just getting the essence of it. And until it all comes together, I wouldn't judge your work until it all comes together. So again, you can do flat petals also with your round brush, which might be preferable for some. Let's get a bit of pigment on there, not too much water. And you can flat petal by combining your strokes together for a little more of a realistic look. I'm turning my page a lot. And then if you want to add a little bit of middle, you can let it dry a little bit or go ahead. And don't be afraid to leave a little bit of white space. White space is definitely a good idea in florals. I'll skip the rose for just right now, and I'll move on to lilac because it's a fun one, and I want that to dry over there before I start messing about. Lilac, let's start with like a long stem, and I'm giving you some ideas here so that when we put together our big bunch, we can sort of start to pull from like, okay, let's add a rose, let's add some greenery, you know what I mean? So for the lilac, we're just going very, very lightly, like as a stem. And also let's mix in a bit of purple on our palette. So I've got pulling lots of blue here and lots of red and giving lots of dark purple. Let's get some more red. And not too much water. That's looking a little blue. Let's get a little pink, a little more pinky color in there. Don't rush the paint mixing. Do it justice. Can you see what I'm doing here? Oh, there we go. Sorry. Shout at me if you can't see. All right, we've got a bit of a purple going here. Okay. Once you're happy with your purple, just the tip of the brush, round it. Make sure your tip is, I'm just looking up here. Make sure you can shape your tip on the corner of your palette. Make sure it's round and not flat. And literally, we're just doing some dots. Try not to have them connect. Try to keep that white space on either side of your, and try not to make it too linear. The more random, the better. And the more consistent the size, the better. Let me zoom in a little. And you could do another leaf out, or it could be really long. And if you push a little too hard, like I pushed a little too hard there, don't sweat it. These floral bunches are meant to kind of be loose and pretty like that. And when they're one-offs like this, they don't look nearly as good as when you get everything together. So remember that too. All right, so there's a little bit of a lilac shape. Peony is tough. Peony, let's come back to peony because peony is tough. Let's go back to rose. So I'll just use the same color I've got on my brush here. And remember, we've been practicing our C's, right? So for the rose, we've got a backward C, or a regular way C, and then a backward C. And you can do it a couple of times around, and you can kind of see like sort of what the makings of a bud would be there. And then I like to suddenly, with the whole of my brush, start small and lean it down like one big petal. Same with on the other side. And then maybe give it a little bit of a petal on the edges. And don't be afraid to change the consistency of the water, of your paint, I mean, by adding a little bit of water as you go around the edges. It's okay if it becomes a little more watery. It's okay if you leave some white space in there. You can go back in with a few more C's. But let your brush do the work. Let your brush, like you're not trying to draw a rose, you're trying to put a little bit of pressure on the brush by lifting and pulling and just letting the petals kind of take shape. And it comes with a bit of practice. I still need lots of practice. And then you can go in with a bit of green, and we will practice some stems and little extra leaves and that kind of thing. All right, let's go over to peony. No, let's do leaves. Peony's tough. Let's do leaves. I'm working my way up to peony. So for leaves, there's, leaves can be almost anything, from something that is sort of long. I got too much water on the brush here, but here I am. Long like this with, a bunch of small leaves coming off. Again, I'm just using the tip of my brush and letting it start small and fan out. Maybe you want to have a long leaf. We tried this a little bit already when we were doing our muscle memory exercise, where you're starting small and leaning down and coming back up for like a long droopier leaf. And if you're getting pooling there, you can kind of help it, fill itself in. You could take a long leaf like that and go on one side and then come and go down the other side and leave a bit of white space in the center. We did a little bit of like short leaves there, but short leaves again, just with I need a little more water and a little more paint. Literally just the brush touching. All good over there. Okay.
All good.
And then if it's feeling like it needs a little more color, you can add a little more color and then let the water like help it out. But short leaves can literally just be your brush. And then stems are a lot of, resisting pressing too hard. A lot of very just light stroking the side of your hand along the table and getting that thin wisp of a line. Challenge yourself to go thinner, like, and thinner, and just practice those stems. My stems are really brutal here. To be honest, it's because I'm working, I think, on this slight corner of the table. You want to be able to have like a whoosh on your elbow, sort of like you're going down like this, not like with your wrist, down with your arm, like a movement. There, look at the difference when you've got some actual space. So you can practice that. And then from the stems, then you can decide, okay, what kind of leaf do I want to come off it? Will it kind of come up and then droop down? You know what I mean? This way. This way? Oh, here we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So it can kind of like up and down. And you'll see what just by moving your and using your brush, you're not actually like drawing a leaf at all. It's sort of allowing it to kind of come out of your brush. And for the roundness of the brush, you're literally using every inch of it, depending on how much pressure you're putting on it.
Kind of looks like bamboo.
Yeah, it does look like bamboo, or like a corn stalk, or, you know. Okay, peony. Mix some red and some pink here. See if we can get a light pink going. So the peony is sort of airy, and it kind of stems from putting, you know, a little bit down on your page and kind of allowing the air, like a little bit of room to live on the flower. And using your brush, put a few petals down. I really stink at the peony. Put a few petals down, but like, I'm not going to sweat it too much, because once it's in the bunch, it's okay. You know, you can get a little bit of yellow in the center, a little bit of pollen in there. And then once you get your green going, you know, it'll start to take its own kind of shape. And, you know, once it gets worked in with the rest of what you're going to put around it, may not be so awful after all. So let's do something like what we've got, and we'll keep it on reference. Like, okay, so what can I add to the mix here? So let's take one of our pieces of watercolor paper, and let's put a circle down. So I'm just going to use my actual palette here and a pencil, and I'll just use this as like a guide. So fairly light pencil line. And now this is a pretty big circle, so that's going to be a lot to fill in. Maybe I should make it smaller, but well, it's fine. It'll be whatever it is, it is. Can you see the pencil line, I guess?
Yep.
Yeah, enough?
Yep.
So let's start with a focal point. Let's do a big rose sort of on one, kind of a third, like, and then let's kind of work in opposite directions and just start filling in. You don't need to be an expert to give this a try. So let's just start with a color. You know, if we like a pink rose or a red rose, or, you know, something like that, let's just go for it. I have a bit of pink on my palette here. And I'm going to start sort of in the bottom third. And I'm just going to do one big rose to get me started. So I'm starting with a bunch of those C's. And then I'm going to just fill in with a couple of big strokes. Kind of act as those outer petals. You can see my brush is a little too dry here. It's okay. You come back over it. And then kind of leave it alone. Don't fuss with it too much. Let there be some white space because there's going to be greenery kind of that fills in all over the place. While we've still got that same paint going, let's work on the opposite side now. And let's do like a little cluster of maybe 3 roses, similar. So small C's and then like a little cluster. Little small C's, more like one could be like a bud, hasn't quite bloomed. And keep everything working off of this circle. So let's rinse off and try something totally different. Let's do like maybe, like a flat petal. Let's get some orange, mix it with some yellow and get kind of a creamier coral color going. And let's get kind of a flat floral going. Just dripping off a little bit of that extra water there. So I'm kind of pulling up.
Can you move your paper down a bit?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'll zoom out here too. Oh, I touched. Whoops. So that's all right. I'm going to take clean water. We all know that by now. You take a little bit of clean water, lift it right off the page, right?
Magic.
Yeah. So let's get the other side of this sort of going. More of a flat floral. And then let's work on the other side again so things are balanced. Let's do a little cluster down here of a similar color. And again, just using the brush, kind of creating some flatter leaves. Let's try to start filling in. And don't worry if it kind of is looking like, what? It's when it all comes together that it all, decides to make sense. Let's get some sort of buds going. They could be what kind of color? Maybe like a darker, like a navy. Let's see what kind of blue I can get going here. How dark I can make it. Well, that's kind of green. Hold on. And for buds, I like to do them in 3s. And the bud is the only time I tend to like actually try to draw like a little bit of a circle and leave a very distinct window. And little buds like this, I love because you can kind of do a little cluster. And they're a dark color, but because they're small, they don't take up a lot of real estate and kind of get a little more of a watercolor going in the odd one. Too much water. Too much water. All the same rules apply. When it feels like you're doing it more for real, all the same rules apply. Get a few buds on here. And let's work on the opposite side too. And so things are starting to kind of, so that we have a bit of balance. Let's put a little cluster of buds down here also. Getting too light, add some paint. You don't have to color it in. Let it kind of, let the water carry some. Now, I know you're looking at this like, this doesn't look like a wreath. It's okay. It will. It will. Let's get some stems going. So let's get some water in our green. And let's start doing a little bit of connecting. Just put a couple of like stems down. Let's see which way we can. And let's try to stay going in a direction. So if we're going to go around this way, maybe it goes up here and up here. Like stay going in a direction. We'll get a little bit of greenery going. And like, let's try to connect some. And it's okay if stuff starts to like kind of go over top of one another. That's all good. Add a little, some green leaves to our stems here. And don't be afraid to mix up your colors. Get a little more, you know, browns, maybe a gray in there for like a little bit of greenery. Let's try to, I don't want too much to catch on these. I know they're still kind of wet here.
It's really cool. Like just a few little stems and it looks so different already.
Yeah, so don't judge it. Like you have to have your focal points and then you have to work around them. Otherwise, you'll have a big jumble of water kind of mixing together. So get some things dried on there and then start to bring in some greenery, and then you'll start to bring in a few smaller type florals. So let's bring in some stems here. Like that's more of a bud. Resist the urge, like I'm finding I'm trying to do it there, resist the urge to try to draw the leaf and try to allow it, the brush to make the leaf shape. You'll be so much more satisfied with the results because it's very hard to draw with a paintbrush like this. So allow the brush to make the shapes. All right, we kind of need something up top here, but we don't want it to be like, bam, something at the top, because our focal point is already established here. And if we suddenly put a big giant flower there, it's not going to be balanced because we can't balance it off the end. So it needs to be sort of greenery stuff that's going to, you know, kind of blend in, bunches of things. Maybe we could do a little swag of our lilac. So remember what we did on our practice sheet, which was put down a stem. Not too much water. Nice and thin. Still around the circle. And then I still have some purple I can activate over here. let that dry a minute. So I've kind of got some purple that's going to go there. I should probably, I kind of touched this down here. Oh, well. Kind of have a little sploosh, but I can activate that with water in a minute. Maybe I'll get another lilac stem going down here too to just balance things out. Remember, we want balance. Maybe you hadn't thought that paintings needed to be balanced before, but we've got a focal point. It's nice that things feel balanced. So if we've done it up here, let's try to do it a little bit somewhere kind of across, something similar. And I'm just testing what might work here. And so I'm kind of coming out in the open. That's okay. It doesn't have to be tight right to the... All right, now I'll bring in my purple. And remember, I'm just rounding off the brush here, making sure it's... And just putting those purple, I'll just put that purple all over those little dots. And you can go up well beyond the stem. And I would encourage you to just have fun with this and not to think like, oh, I have to have a frame-worthy painting. You know, the point is to fill it in, have the fun of filling it in, and just watch it grow. And if it sits in a folder or in your desk, that's fine. You know, it's the fun of doing it. It doesn't have to always be something, or doesn't have to be giveable every single time. It can just be for the fun of it. Remember, feel free to move your page around. How's everybody doing out there? Everyone's just watching, huh?
Everyone's just watching.
All right.
No questions yet.
We're going to be live tomorrow night on the Cricut page to officially launch the projects for our Cricut event. So if you are, if you have a Cricut machine or you've wanted a Cricut machine, you can tune in. We'll kind of be previewing what we're going to be making, who's going to be involved. You can ask any questions. Cricut's got tons of giveaways that they're planning, which is amazing.
We've got a question.
Question? Go ahead.
Where is Ruby tonight?
I know, that is a good question. Ruby! She had just gotten home from her friend's house. And, you know, the grade 6 drama is really real. And so I said, if you don't want to do it tonight, you don't have to. She's like, oh, okay. Maybe she'll make an appearance. But I think she'll like knowing that you guys were asking for her about her.
Okay, I got another question here from Nell.
Okay.
What are some tricks to scale? In other words, doing something like this on a 5x7 card versus an A6 versus a picture size.
I mean, I think you kind of have to just eyeball it at this point. I would always start with a guideline, like I've got my circle here, or a square, or if you just want to work in one corner, for example, is to put that line down and don't allow yourself to go too far out of the edges. And I think the scale will kind of come naturally if you do that. Lay down a guideline like I have here first. we're getting there. We're getting there. I think we need a few more leaves to like start to bulk things up a bit, but I think we need to bring in a different color of leaf, like more of a background leaf. So to achieve that on stuff that you want as fill, but not necessarily to like really pop, you could try mixing a gray. I also think we need a third bunch of buds because this pops, this blue. When something pops like this, you should really try to do it in threes. It's a little more pleasing to the eye. So before I get to those grays, I'm just going to put down a few more of those buds. And maybe let's take just a look at this like this. Well, there's only two. And then see what happens when we add that third bunch. If suddenly like everything feels just a little more balanced. Kind of like learn about what feels like balance. Or maybe everyone's just at home going like, oh, looks good either way to me. I don't know. Wow, look at that. So much more balance. It's incredible. It really makes the picture. I mean,
that's what everyone is saying.
It does. Come on. All right. So I'm going to let those dry a little bit before I kind of connect them with some leaves. But we've got a bit of greenery here that kind of goes nowhere. So we could, I am going to get to the filler gray greenery, but I'm kind of seeing over here that maybe we could do with a few more like flower type. Nothing too big, but something maybe kind of wispy, or not so much the lilacs again, but just something to kind of fill it in here. So maybe it could be just buds, more like this shape. So I'm just going to pick up that bit of pink. Little C and just a little bud. And then maybe one more little C's, big stroke, bud. And one more down here, C's, bud. And let's balance it on this side. Remember, like we want to try to balance. So let's put a little bud here. Remember, these are just C's. Maybe you're like, what the hell? I don't see any C's. Like a freaking bud. But it's the way the brush is going down on the page is like all variations of a little letter C. We could put some of those buds up in here too, because sets of 3, that's a good idea. Since they're a little bit of a different color than these buds, maybe we could get a few in here, but we have to bring some greenery in to kind of connect them here. So I'm going to go this way and kind of put some in, but make sure we kind of get some greenery on there to
move your paper up a bit. Yeah.
the balance we're achieving is just excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
They are liking your balance. Looks great like that.
But just remember, the only real big flower, even though it's not jumping off the page, really is just right here. That really is still the focal point. And everything is sort of going like from kind of meets here. Like, you know, this is angled towards the focal point. All right, I've got a little bit of green on my brush here. Let's just get some more. We don't want to leave any buds just like hanging in the universe, not connected to anything. Resist the urge. I'm resisting to draw in your leaves. Try to let the paintbrush, the shape of the brush, do all of that lifting. Nearly dropped my brush again, right on there. So we need some more stems coming here.
Nell says, I'll read you Nell's comment here. She says, okay, so I have to say this. In an earlier session, you said you are not an artist, but a crafter.
Yeah.
Have to totally disagree. You are both. My work is not turning out to look anywhere near that good.
Oh, it will. This isn't my first day. You know, it's really not. You know, you saw my folder, right? Like, these are all just like practicing. These are all just ones that never went anywhere except for just in this folder. You know, there's lots that really stink. There's lots that are like, okay, but you just keep practicing. Like, bring it places with you. If you have an hour here and there, sit down and do it. Or if you're the kind of person that ends up waiting places sometimes, or if you spend your weekends at the soccer field or at the rink, or, you know, these are things that you can do, and it's very portable. So just keep practicing, and you will, over time, you know, they'll start to look better. Okay. So I'm seeing good flow. I still need some green on these, but we're missing a little something kind of here. Kind of feeling a little thin there. I don't want to mess with the nice light preserved highlight here. Like, I think that looks good. Even though this on its own does not really look like, if you're looking at that just yellow shape, but bunched together in this wreath, it couldn't look more like a blooming flower. You know what I mean? So remember that when you're thinking, this doesn't look like a flower, get everything coming together first before you decide you hate it, you know? Now I'm going to get a little background foliage going. We're going to do that gray. So let's get a little blue, a little green, and a very kind of watery. I just added a little bit of red there so I could kind of get like more of a gray color. Like, we don't want dead leaves in there, but we don't want them all. We don't want it taking over either when we're adding more stuff.
Dead leaves.
Yeah, we don't need dead leaves. But you'll see here how just a few extra that don't take up, like, because it's a lighter color, it's going to allow you to fill a little bit without distracting from the overall colors. See what I mean? And I'm just going to get it a little more watery. Now this rose is sort of hanging off to nowhere. Let's kind of connect it to the main. But just lightly. We don't need to draw attention to it. So I can just sort of use the gray here.
The gray almost looks like a shadow or something.
Yeah, it's just enough to help fill it in.
Oh yeah, Linda Deeks just said, so the gray is like a shadow.
Yeah, just enough to fill it in.
Linda says the gray really makes the other colors pop more.
It's true. And if I continued to put green, the same color green, you're not going to allow what's meant to stand out. It's going to end up feeling very flat. Even though you've got a lot of like brighter colors in there, it's funny how you're right, Linda, that adding that gray allows it to pop more and makes the picture, even though the gray color is kind of flat, allows the other colors to be the star. So let's go back to some of our main attractions here, like the rose and, you know, some of the buds. And do they need a few centers? Like now that they've kind of dried, could we go in with, let's say, a little orangey yellow tip, and in a couple of their centers, could we put a little tiny little sprigs just for a little something? Like right in the center? Could we do that? Well, we could. We are.
I was going to say, a little late.
Yeah. Could we? Oh, I missed a green there. But, you know, that's the kind of thing you can look at. Like, should we have a little orange, you know, or brown kind of, you know, a little extra texture? Maybe. But when you're happy with it, stop. If you're looking at it and going like, yeah, stop. Unless there's a gaping hole somewhere, like I've got a bit of a hole down here. Unless there's a big hole, you should stop before you regret it. Okay, I think I'm going to stop.
Don't forget the green.
Yeah,
on the rosebud.
I need that green right there. So once this is totally dry, you could, you know, put a little word in there if you wanted. You can just leave it as is. That'd be fine too. It could just be a practice piece. It could just, you know, sit in your folder. You could frame it. You know, you could, I don't know, what else could you do with it? Frame it. You could put it away. You can paint on the back. You decide what kind of makes you happy. I like the idea of displaying something that you did for a little while anyway. Go put it up. maybe sometime you could leave this for now. And if we ever in the future do a little brush lettering thing, you could do a little, happy summer, put it in your kitchen, on your fridge, look good, your own art on your own fridge. But I would encourage you to take a page and fill it. Even if if you fill it with the circle, if you just fill it all around a focal point and just keep on going. If you fill it around a square, keep on going. If you decide something like this, okay, focal point, and then let's just draw in some lines. Why don't, before we go, we do one quick one like this, and then we'll wrap it up and let you guys kind of build on what you've done here. I'll take just, maybe I'll take a smaller card like this and just do kind of one rose or one focal point at the bottom here. And then we'll use our markers, our fine line markers, and a ruler or some sort of straight edge. I can just use my stamp block maybe.
There's
It's
some
here.
rulers over there.
Oh yeah, there's lots of quilting around here. For anyone who's in the quilting retreat, I just want to tell you I've been making the quilt again. It's so good. It's so good. We're all like swooning over it. We love it so much. It looks really good. Okay, I'm just going to use up some of that purple that I've got. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my little C with that purple. I'm going to try to get a little deeper shade.
Well, Sandra's asking, is there a reason why you wouldn't do the lines first?
Well, because I don't want the flower to go over top of the lines. And the lines are going to show through because it's watercolor. It's not going to be opaque. So the reason why I'm doing the flower first is so that I can put the lines where the flower isn't. See what I mean? Otherwise, I'd have a big black line going through my rose there. And I mean, you could do that, but I just think it looks better like this. So that's why. All right, some little C's to start. I'm going to give myself a little yellow on my same purple brush here. Let's see what, hopefully that doesn't make it all brown. It might make it too brown. Good thing I tested that. That would have been a royal mess up. Instead, I'll just make it more watery. And then once it dries a bit, I'll bring in some yellow. So my C's, bigger C. Now I'm getting a little close to the edge of the page here. All right, let's leave that alone. Let that dry a little bit and see how it kind of takes its shape. And we could bring in a little let's pick up some green. Well, maybe I'll echo it on the other side. I'll try to have it facing a little bit, down towards its buddy. That looks a little too blue. Add some red. Add some more blue when it looks too red.
It's much more red. Charlene's asking if this is the last watercolor class.
This is the last watercolor class in our series, but lots of you have said that you wanted to keep going. I've got some stuff coming up in the next couple weeks because the kids are now off school and they've got a bit of a break. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break for the next couple of weeks, but I'll post and we'll do a few more Watercolor Wednesdays over the summer. And then maybe in the fall, we'll try to come back together and do it again more regularly. Okay, deal? I'm going to get some gray leaves going again. Nothing too wild. Well, a little greener, but at first, but then also fill it with a bit of gray. Try to let your brush, have them take shape with the brush. If you need a little more color, you can add it to the stem and then let it, remember when we did let the water travel? Do that.
Linda would like to do more with this kind of, learning this kind of flower.
The florals, technique. I know, the florals are where it's at for sure. The florals are what you need to practice week by week for sure. So take what you've learned about your brush and getting some muscle memory going. See how I'm holding the brush away and doing it away from me? I'm not always pulling it towards me. Okay, let's just use, now I'm going to make sure this is a little dry before I
smudge it.
Before I smudge it, exactly. I think I dropped my markers here. So if you've got an art liner marker here or a fine line pen, I'm going to use the 0.5. It's like thin but not thick, thick but not thin kind of thing. And I'm just going to roughly put in some lines where there are no flowers or leaves. Make sure it's not on the edge. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just sort of so this would make for a great card front.
I was thinking that'd be cute for like a thank you card or something.
Totally. And you could double up your lines. You could put a little sideways line on the end here. Just kind of give it a little bit more something. See what I mean? Can go any way. You could write thank you yourself here. Should I?
Yeah.
Do I dare? If you're nervous, put it in pencil first. Or at the very least, put like a line, because you can always erase it. Pencil comes off of watercolor cardstock beautifully. White eraser is my favorite.
Everyone's loving it. Marie France loves it. Angela says it's beautiful.
Thank you, guys. And we could do a little faux calligraphy, since if we're not quite to actual calligraphy. Okay, what should we write? Thank you? Is that what everyone's saying? Thank you?
You need teacher gift card?
Oh, yeah.
Teacher card?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. All right, let's just do thank you. So I'm going to actually write it. I'll write thanks because I think because this is like kind of proper. I feel like a free flowing thanks would kind of contrast. So I'm just going to write it in. And so thanks is written there, but I'm going to thicken my downstrokes. Everywhere there's a downstroke. I'm just going to kind of thicken it, color it in. See how the balance needs to happen? Like the K needs to kind of mimic the T, like that needs to look like a similar shape for a bit of balance. And the S is the toughest because there's so many weird side strokes, but you can kind of feel where your pen goes down and thicken it up.
It's cute.
And then once you know it's dry, you can erase your pencil line. And you could use one of the cards that you have in your kit. I wouldn't use this color. But maybe one of the other colors. I don't know. They're not right at my fingertips right this second. Oh, behind? I always choose navy.
Under the other.
Oh, yeah. Here's a bunch. What do we like? Probably. No.
Card.
Yes. Of all of these. That's the one I'd pick. Would I pick this one? No. I would almost always pick navy. Navy is always the way to go. Navy is like my favorite for neutral backgrounds. Anyway, look, you know what? It was
works.
5 to 8, I think, when we started that card, right? 5 to 8. So it's now like 7 minutes after 8. So you don't have to be like a super great artist to pull off a little card front like this. And if you want to spend an hour in the evening de-stressing, doing something other than like scrolling on your phone, but don't get me wrong, I love scrolling on my phone. I'm not giving that up. But this is fun too. And you will feel accomplished. And every time you do a little something like this, you'll get a little bit better. The muscle memory will, continue to develop, and you'll just be kind of astounded at the way some of these shapes can kind of come out the end of your brush. So long as you promise me, you're not going to try to draw the flowers. You're going to let the petals and the leaves like take shape from the shape of the brush. That's the golden rule that I hope I leave you with tonight. And you can spend the next couple weeks, having a little play with it. And we can meet back here again. I'll give a post when our summer holidays are kind of winding down and we're settled into our summer routine. I can't believe it's the last week of school for us. Some people are already out. We've got a very busy summer ahead and lots of things happening here at Homemade, and that we'll be announcing in the fall, but there's lots of things we're working on. So know that even though we maybe, we're not on hiatus, but we don't have we're not going live every week, that we're still working on some really fun stuff. And to continue posting in the group, hopefully you're in the Homemade group, because I'll still be checking in there and posting things there, and everybody is posting what they're working on all the time. So that's really fun. And we can stay in touch stay in touch that way. I hope you've all learned a little bit about watercolor. I hope you've surprised yourself. At the very least, I hope you've had fun. And that this has just been a little bright spot of like, huh, that was good. You know, we need those things. And so if you're kind of feeling it, break out the watercolors, let it be a little something good in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in and participating and all the interaction. If you, I'd love it if you shared some of these lives or let people know that we were doing some of stuff like this. That always grows our community and really helps us out. So if you guys can keep that up, I'd be so appreciative. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.